Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 702. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. In the SPaMCAST 702, Matthew Stibbe and I talk about the impact of leadership when building a technology-driven business. Matthew shared stories about learning to type, how he has reinvented himself numerous times, and why he blogs at geekboss.com. Note, I have not edited out the parts of the interview just before I welcome Matthew to the podcast. Generally get rid of that stuff. It's mostly level checks and things. Mr. Stibbe told a couple of very endearing stories in this time that helped set the tone for the entire interview. He agreed to allow me to share these with you. Matthew Stibbe is a serial entrepreneur, marketing maven, writer, pilot, and wine enthusiast, but not necessarily in that order. He created marketing strategies, content, and campaigns for clients, including Microsoft, Google, LinkedIn, HP, and contributed to Wire, Forbes, and Popular Science. He's currently the CEO of Articulate Marketing, a UK marketing agency specializing in the technology sector. Matthew also has his commercial pilot's license and an advanced wine diploma. At some point in the previous millennium, he studied history at Oxford University. These days, blogs about modern management at www.geekboss.com. Really recommend that. And about marketing at articulatemarketing.com. And wine at vincarta.com. Are you ready to learn something new and really have a great time doing it? It's time for the interview. Okay, everything is incrementing. I'm seeing, can I get a voice level, please?
Yes, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog.
Ooh, I used to type that at one point. Yeah, that's when we actually had to go off and learn typing.
I was taught typing by nuns in a girls' school. And when I was at school, I went to an all-boys, typical English boarding school. And on Friday afternoons, we had general studies. So we could, which was not an academic course. And you could choose, you could elect what to do. And they had cooking and they had typing and various other sort of allegedly life skills. And also on Friday afternoon, we had army cadets. So we were also, there was sort of student soldiers. It was very strange looking back on it. How did that ever happen? And I thought it was a tremendous idea to go to sign up for the typing course that was taught at the local girls' school. And there was a bunch of us used to go off on Friday afternoons in our uniform, feeling very sort of in our teenage way, very sort of manly and rocky and hoping to meet young women at the girls' school. But we were herded through the corridors, flanked on all sides by these nuns, up into the typing classroom. We didn't have a chance to talk to any of them girls at the school. But if we typed badly, I type I'm very fast typing, and it was genuinely the most valuable thing I learned at school. But if you didn't hold your fingers right and you didn't type, they hit you on your knuckles with a ruler. So this is my memory of typing, is being whacked by nuns. I don't know if that's safe for work, but that's a strange memory of touch typing.
No, that's safe for work. That is, that's a fantastic story. And unfortunately, I went to a Catholic school and ran into nuns that were like that once or twice in my illustrious career in schools. So, Matthew Stibbe, founder, CEO of Articulate Marketing, and blogger at geekboss.com. By the way, those two things sound very, very different. How did you get to both of those two things in, one introduction?
Well, I think of myself as a geek. I self-identify as a geek, meaning I'm very interested in how things work. I kind of obsess about that. I've had a lifelong career in technology, and the unifying factor, I suppose, is I spent 10 years, more than 10 years, designing computer games and running a company that made computer games. And then I took a brief sabbatical and became a bit of a freelance journalist, and I used to write for Wired and Popular Science, which are, geek magazines, if ever such a thing existed. And then I started Articulate Marketing. So this was around 2003. But my first clients were the Design Council, which is a quango in the UK, and Microsoft. And since then, Articulate Marketing has worked for Google and LinkedIn and Hewlett-Packard and lots of big geeky names, as well as smaller startup businesses and mid-market software companies. And I think the bit that runs through all of that rather varied career is this passion for technology that I have. But I'll tell you a funny story about Geek Boss. I run Articulate Marketing, and we have Slack, like most techie businesses, and we develop a little bit of software in our, as a sideline to support our work. And I was telling my wife, we were driving through Romania. So we were driving from Bucharest north up to Iași. And I was passing the time on this long journey, telling my wife about how I had integrated the game Zork into Slack so that you could actually play Zork in a Slack channel. And that how my colleagues were then collaboratively playing Zork, and then mostly millennial young kids, to me, young kids, who don't remember Zork coming out, whereas I remember Zork. I mean, I was excited by Zork when I was at school, and they were exploring this interactive fiction. And my wife turned to me and she said, "Matthew, you are such a geek boss." And I immediately went, "Oh, I love that." And I went on to a domain registry thing, and I went, "Can I buy geekboss.com?" But by the time we got to Iași, I had bought geekboss.com. And so I now feel like I have to blog at geekboss.com because of that conversation in order to live up to the expectation. But in fact, if you want a story about my life, it's making Zork work in Slack for young marketing people for a company that does tech marketing. That pretty much joins everything up.
I don't know that I'll ever find a story that tops that one. That's just wow.
It's going to be the rest of this interview is downhill from it. There, that's the best story I've got.
It is interesting, right? I think you actually proved, regardless of the Zork in the Slack channel, the fact that you ran across a domain that you were interested in, you bought it as you were driving. That says a lot. Also, many of my listeners are programmers. There are some that are C-level execs, so it's a broad audience. Many of them struggle with the idea of being able to pivot in their careers and function in other domains. You've gone from game design to freelance writing to now running a marketing firm and giving away a lot of content. I have gone and looked at geekboss.com and enjoyed it. How does one make that pivot? I mean, and how does one make that pivot and be a leader at the same time?
Oh, well, okay, let's try and unpack that a little bit. I try and approach this with a bit of humility because I'm pretty sure the one thing I've learned is I don't have any good answers. My dear friend Claire Cox once said to me, "A lifetime is a very long time to have a career. You can change things." And the idea that you're not locked into whatever it is you do. And she's an actor. She's done a few films and things like that. And so, actors are perennially obsessed about their career. Am I progressing? Am I getting the right jobs? Am I getting cast for the right things? And I think that's a very comforting thought, that you've got plenty of time to do the work that you're going to do. So that thought was very strong in me. The other thing that is very strong, I mean, if that's a liberating thought, a lifetime is a long time to have a career and you're not locked in. The other thought that's very strong is when I ran my computer games company, I started it when I was 18 and I sold it when I was 30. And for most of that time, I really thought they were going to carry me out in my coffin. I would never do anything else in my life. And just at the end of that journey, 1999, 2000, I had a number of opportunities to sell the business. And I just thought, I don't have to do this for the rest of my life. I have a choice. And I thought, I'll take that. I'll seize that. But the day I signed the papers to sell the business, and the lawyers came in and there was a great pile of contracts and this thing and that thing. And I remember very vividly going down into the car park outside the building that we had sitting in my car, and it was sort of lunchtime, and it was sort of mid-July in 2000, and sitting in my car and going, right, what do I do now? In the immediate reality of like, where do I go for lunch? I don't have an office anymore. What am I going to do this afternoon? But actually also, this was rather strange existential, like, this has been my whole adult life, my self-definition of being an entrepreneur in a computer games. In those days, I was a bit of a whiz kid because I was in my 20s, and this is my thing. And it took me a couple of years to find my level. I was a dilettante journalist. I mean, I wrote for some amazing magazines and had an amazing time doing it. I got to fly on NASA's space shuttle simulator and write an article about that. That was like, that was my dream thing. But it took me a while to kind of find a new thing. So I guess I needed a bit of a kick. So the lesson I'm bringing from that is anything's possible. And the thing you're doing doesn't have to be the thing you have to do. What got you here isn't necessarily what's going to get you there. And there's a sort of a lesson of hope. Every time in my life I have closed a door on something, I've let something go, I've said to somebody, actually, I'm not prepared to work on those conditions, or I don't want to do this anymore. I've run out of runway on this. Thank you very much. Every time that's happened, some amazing new thing has come along that's filled the gap with great delight and happiness. So how do you pivot? You pivot, you just do it. You try something, and it's okay to let go, and it's okay to try something else. How do you do that with leadership? I will say this. When I sold my games company, we were 70 plus people, and it was quite a big business, and I had a big old corner office, and I was, a leader. I'm using air quotes for people at home listening in black and white. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a kid. I had absolutely no idea. But I did come away from that experience saying two things. I never want to have another office. I don't want the overhead. And I never want to have employees again. Well, I still don't have an office. We've been remote working at Articulate Marketing from the beginning, long before it was fashionable. But I did break the rule about hiring people, and we have now I have 18 employees. So I guess too much leadership responsibility too young can be a little bit of a burden. And I think I'm full of awe and respect for people who will go out and learn about how to be a leader and train themselves and find mentors. I know I'm going on a little bit, so I'll close with this thought with one additional thought. The thing that I do that I'm trying to lean into very much now is two things. One, I'm trying very hard to build a professional management team at Articulate Marketing to pivot from what I would call sort of heroic individual leadership. I'm the king of the tribe and everyone has to do what I say, to actually I'm the chairman of the board and we have a team of extraordinary managers driving the business forward. And also I'm trying very hard to reach out to people to get mentoring and support. When I was in my 20s, I didn't think I needed it. In my 30s, I didn't want to have a company full of people to warrant it. And now I think it's my duty to be as good of a manager and as good of a leader as I can. So what I'm trying to do very much on Geek Boss is explore what it means to be a manager and a leader and kind of challenge myself a little bit. So some of it's a little bit raw and naked, a little bit sort of, I wish I had known then what I know now.
Understand. I think if you are a learning human being, I think you always have to say that because, you learn more as time goes by. In terms of geekboss.com, what sort of, if it's that raw, what sort of reaction have you gotten as you've put stuff out there?
I wrote an article and did a webinar recently about change management. We have, in the last 18 months at Articulate, gone through a really substantial change. Partially this transition from individual entrepreneurial leadership to sort of more professional management. And so I talked a lot about that, and I shared a video about that. And I was rather touched, actually. A few people came to me and talked to me and messaged me about how it had helped them. But also, actually, a couple of colleagues inside Articulate had said, I had no idea that you are dealing with some of these challenges. There is a tendency for people to, of course, we're all the hero of our own story, to see the world through their own lens, their own perspective, judge it based on their own needs. So I think being able to sort of open up a little bit about the vulnerabilities, the risks, the challenges that I face as a manager, as a leader of the business, I had the feedback I've had is that was actually quite helpful in understanding that and seeing the world in a slightly different perspective. And many of your listeners will have come across the idea of the Johari window, the things that are known and things that are unknown about one another in a relationship. There's a challenge with leadership. I've heard this expression, the posture of leadership is calm presence, right? So one of the things that leaders have to do, especially in a crisis like COVID, is go, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to be fine. It's going to be okay. So that's one pressure that's on a leader. The other pressure that's on a leader that I'm very conscious of is, you kind of want to go, I've got all the answers. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to make all this work. And kind of being calm presence is a gift, and it's an important thing to show. But unyielding arrogance, the inability to accept new data and change your position, the inability to sympathetically understand what other people are thinking and what their needs are and how you can build collaboration and teamwork with them, that's a weakness. But calm presence is a strength. And it's very easy to confuse those two things. And this is the path that I think a leader walks if they're good. And I think we've seen a lot in recent years of politicians and other people who are, all the way over to the I'm right and I'm always right and I'm never going to accept anything that challenges that. And, I think that's a very bad role model for leadership.
So how did you
I hope I don't go there.
Yeah, well, how did you sort that? I mean, that is hard. Finding that balance is, well, it takes, I guess, practice. But how did you?
Well, I hope I've got there. I think.
Well played.
Yeah. I don't want to come onto this thing and say, look, I've got all the answers and I know everything. And I don't want Geek Boss to be like, do what I say. It is a constant journey. I mean, the risk of sounding ultra pretentious, was it Socrates who said, the only thing I know is I know nothing. I think a sort of self-skepticism is quite important. I really liked the book Radical Candor. I'm English, so we don't do a lot of radical candor. We do an awful lot of circumlocution and sort of passive aggressive and so on. And I would like to be braver. So, but part of radical candor is going, look, I've got your interests at heart and I'm going to tell you what I think. But I'd like you to tell me what you think with my interest, with the business interests at heart as well. And that listening, very good. We had a colleague who interned with us for about 6 months. She was actually a former head teacher. I love head teachers. I used to be a school governor for 10 years. And the 2 head teachers I worked with there were the finest people I've met. So Angie was working with us, and she used to have come up with these wonderful sayings. One of them was, "I'm going to give him a damn good listening to." I really liked that. I think I'm not. I talk a lot, and that's one of the privileges and one of the abuses of power. But I think giving people a damn good listening to is probably the best way of navigating that path.
I want to sort of go back just a little bit and thinking about the idea that a career is, one career is probably too few for a lifetime. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing that very badly. As a leader now, with the things that you've learned, when you're interacting and mentoring those around you, the 18 people around you now, how does that idea translate into how you relate to them?
So one of the things that I used to find very hard, still find it a little bit hard, but I think I deal with it in a more mature way, is people leaving the company. People who I think are good. It feels still a little bit like a rejection. So one of the things that I'm trying to do as a leader and as a manager is to respect people's life choices and their career development. And sometimes the best thing that you can do for somebody's career is to let them go and let them take the next step. And sometimes there are amazing opportunities when you let people pivot in their career within the business. And I'll give you an example of this. the first person that I hired, breaking my rule of I'm never hiring anyone again, was a personal assistant, Liz Fielder. And more than 10 years later, she's still working at Articulate Marketing. She's not my PA anymore. She's our Chief Happiness Officer. And there was a big change about 5-6 years ago in her career. There was a potential there and an opportunity and a need and an ambition, and we made that change. So I think that's one of the nice things that you can do as a manager of your own business is kind of go, I see something in you that maybe you don't see, or maybe the market doesn't see, or but this is what I want to have happen, or this is what you've told me, and this is how I can facilitate it or make it happen. So being open to those sorts of opportunities is also good. One of the hardest things, because I want to be liked and I want to be a good boss and everything, is saying to somebody, I can't make that happen for you yet, or I can't make that happen for you now. One of the challenges, I think, with younger people, I don't want to caricature people as millennials, and I shouldn't have said that earlier. But there is a sort of, I've been here 6 months, why haven't I been promoted yet attitude. And there's a sort of you need to be a bit better, or you need to make a bit more progress or something. So having those kinds of conversations, but being clear about where they could get to and what they need. So one of the things we've been doing in the last 18 months as part of this change program is we hired a CFO who is actually 50% focusing on HR. We went through a program in the UK called Investors in People, which is very much how you manage people. It was originally a government scheme. So we went through a certification and an audit for that last year and certified as Investors in People Silver, which is level 2 of 4 levels. But it's an objectively audited measure. And it's that being able to measure yourself against these external standards, I think, is very important as well when you're thinking about how you develop as a leader of people. So Investors in People is one thing. We're a B Corp as well, which is another external objective standard. And I think those are very helpful too.
You indicated that Articulate Marketing has been remote before remote was the thing. Having been, are you ever going to stop being remote? Are you going to go to hybrid? You're going to get that corner office back?
Oh, no. That corner office was a bit of a cave and a refuge and a barrier, actually. I think I'm much more available now when I haven't got a door that's always open. People can chat to me on Slack or message me or set up meetings. No, there was a weird thing that used to happen actually in the office, and after I sold the business, and I was constantly bumping into people going through doorways, into shops or restaurants or something, and I couldn't quite figure out why it was happening. I felt very clumsy, and I realized that I had spent about 8 hours a day as the boss of a company walking around an office with people getting out of my way, letting me through doors first. So I think it's not very good for one's humility to be in an office and be the big boss. I think what has changed with remote working is because it's now much more common, some of the advantages that we had with recruitment have evaporated. We used to attract people who very much wanted to work that way. So we're a very neurodiverse company. There's quite a large number of people in the company who don't particularly like being with other people in an office, who are fantastic employees and wonderful colleagues, and it works very well for them. But they've got other opportunities now. So that's changed a little bit. And we're working much harder on our employer brand and our recruitment process and things. Suddenly we're competing with everyone else, whereas we used to be not unique, but very unusual as a remote working company. At the same time, I think we learned a lot about how to do it. So coming into the pandemic and the lockdowns, we didn't break stride at all. It was just like business as usual for us.
As we come out of the pandemic, you don't think you're going to regain that as organizations, big organizations that have invested in real estate and can't get out of the real estate they're going to drag people back? And will that make you have that wonderful advantage come back?
I don't think we'll get it 100%. I suspect we'll get it back 20, 25%. I think there'll be a lot more opportunities for fully remote working for people who really want that. And, I think all companies are struggling with the so-called Great Resignation, which I think is actually not only the pandemic, it's a lot of employment practice chickens coming home to roost. I mean, I think there's a lot of bad employers out there. So that one of the things that I think, two things that I think will evolve a little bit for us. We haven't been able to do our face-to-face meetings for a couple of years. And we used to meet up every month or two as a whole company. We'd fly everyone in, put them up in a hotel. And so we would have face-to-face time, because you do need to invest in that social equity, that communication, that trust building. So I hope that will come back. I think the other thing that's really noticeable, and this is a general trend as well, is these sort of flexible remote working offices where you can rent a desk for a day or a meeting room for a day. And 10 years ago, that was really unusual. Regus was around, but none of the WeWork and things were just an idea. And so we have a thing called a happiness account. So we give people a personal budget to spend on things. And we're starting to see people spend that money going into an office once or twice or 3 times a week, not because they want to be with us, but because they want to be with people.
Interesting.
So it's effectively rent a crowd, rent an office experience, but not necessarily spend time with your colleagues.
Wow. I actually, that's a very interesting concept. Maybe I'll try that out myself. Yeah, my dog likes me, but sometimes we don't have that good, interesting, out-of-body kind of conversation. That whole leadership in this dynamic world, right? So, we've over the past number of years keep talking about change happening at a faster and faster rate. Arguably, that may have actually just been change in the same direction. Things like the lockdown, things like the pandemic. As someone who is a leader, thinks about leadership, blogs at geekboss.com, what advice would you give to somebody who's actually having to deal with real change, not just this, even though it's fast and maybe not exactly linear, this just absolutely huge change in the world that we've gone through?
I think continuity is a bit of an illusion. Anti-change doesn't really happen. You can't really control things and lock things down, and you're kidding yourself if you can. I think there is an interesting argument to be had about whether the pace of change really is accelerating. For example, and I'm being glib here, I don't think moving from Facebook to TikTok really is accelerating change. It's just a different thing that's the same. It's just more. And, yes, of course, the pandemic, what extraordinary times we've lived through and how challenging. But I was listening to a webinar today by Peter Chapp from the WOW Company, they are our accountants and they are also a client of Articulate's. And he's a very interesting chap. And he said during the lockdown, during the pandemic, business managers and leaders did some interesting things. They planned really hard. They focused very hard on what made their customers happy. They really concentrated on not spending money on things they didn't need to spend money on, right? Shouldn't they be doing that anyway?
Wow.
And the moment the pandemic is sort of, hopefully, touch wood, beginning to recede, people are starting to fall back into their lazy habits. And I thought that was a bit striking. Yeah, I can I tell you a joke that I think relates to this?
Sure.
I trained as a historian at Oxford, and there's the story goes that the college board of governors was meeting to decide how to invest a legacy that they had been left by an old student of the college. And the bursar says, well, I think we should invest this money into land because land has been very good for the college. It's been a good investment for the last 1,000 years. And the history fellow who's sitting around the table, he says, oh, yes, but you have to remember that the last 1,000 years have been quite exceptional. And the point being, change is a constant, right? And the Black Death was an extraordinary pandemic and then wiped out 30 to 50% of the population of of Europe. Nothing like the coronavirus. In 1666, Samuel Pepys lived through the Great Plague of London, and that killed 20 to 30% of the population. And then there was a great fire, and that burned down most of central London. I mean, actually, I think human beings are capable of much more than we assume. we can survive and endure a lot more. And we have this amazing potential for change and growth. So I think those are quite comforting things to hang on to if it feels like it's getting a bit much and the change is a bit much. How you bring people through change, that's very hard. And I think it requires a sort of staking out a claim of this is where we're going, and then recognizing and dealing with very carefully and subtly, using what Buddhists call skillful means, the things that are stopping individuals moving towards that change. On my webinar about change management, change control, I put a cartoon from 1940 from British papers when Churchill took over as a leader, as prime minister. And it's a cartoon showing Churchill as the sort of the heroic leader with all the cabinet and the British people all marching in step behind him. And it's this extraordinary vision of, and some of leadership is, I know where we're going and I have the moral courage to make the change, and I can tell you how we're going to get there, and I can tell you what it's going to be, what Churchill called the broad sunlit uplands, right? But some of it is just hard grinding management and attention and people and psychology and work. And I think if you pay attention to one and not the other, or either is a danger. I think change requires both progress and detail. Is it easy? No. Do I do it well? No. And one of the things I like very much about Churchill, I'm a big fan, and I recently reread his war memoirs. Yes, he gave these amazing speeches. Yes, he was an inspirational leader. Yes, he had tremendous moral courage. But actually, the bit that sticks in my mind as a historian in his books are the pages and pages of memos that he wrote to people about details. Do this, change that. Why isn't this working? Why can't we have more radar? Why can't we get this thing done quicker? And it's that is the mechanism of change that he applied. Nothing changed. Well, arguably, some things changed psychologically, but nothing practically changed because he made speeches. Changed because he drove change forward. And I think that's an important thing to hold on to as well.
Yeah, that's the money shot, as we would say.
You know what Werner von Braun said about going to the moon? He said, going to the moon is easy, but the paperwork is very, very difficult.
Oh, yeah, I could buy that too. Matthew, this has been marvelous. If you woke up tomorrow morning, someone handed you your caffeinated beverage of choice and a magic wand and gave you 2 wishes that you could solve anything that led to better leadership, what would those 2 things be and why?
These run the risk of being very small wishes. Somebody asked me the other day if I could have any prop from a film, what would I have? And I wanted the fireman's pole out of Ghostbusters. So they're at that sort of level of, for myself, I wish I had a better emotional intelligence and a better intuition about what people were thinking. And I also, the change I'm working on for myself is to delegate more and trust more. And I would like to be better at that, of inspiring other people to step in and step up and step forward, and not to hold it all to myself. That's the very hard transformation that an entrepreneur has to go through to become a good manager. I think if I could wave my magic wand and have my caffeinated beverage of choice for the world, for management, for leadership, I would like one for a little bit more respect for fact and data and evidence and judgment. I'd like our leaders to be able to learn a new thing and change their position without it being embarrassing for them. And I would like us all to be better at sort of weighing up evidence and weighing up opinions and finding, if we can try and find psychologically some common ground, a little bit better understanding of what other people are thinking and a little bit better understanding of what we're thinking. If we can't have, I've forgotten his name, but somebody said, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts. I think if we could try and find some better way of establishing the common facts, but also emotionally, sympathetically understanding the different opinions. I think that there's a lot of work that we all have to do there, whatever your politics, I think. I don't know if is that too ambitious? Can I have a magic? Can I have another coffee and I'll think about the third wish?
Of course you could have another coffee. But no, ambitious, so be it. That would be wonderful. How can people continue the conversation?
Well, let me give a couple of pointers on how you can open the conversation generally. I need to practice this a little bit too. I liked when I used to be able to fly to go to an airport magazine newsagent and buy magazines about things that I didn't know about and kind of try and immerse myself in somebody else's hobby or passion or interest or obsession. And I like to buy magazines from opinion perspectives that I didn't necessarily agree with or automatically hold. Now, I'm a reader and I like words. I'm a writer. So that's my imaginative project to try and understand what other people are thinking and doing. So that's one thing. I like to read, if not the whole newspapers, but I like to read the headlines of all the main newspapers every day. In the UK, like lots of places, they're very polarized. There's very strong opinions on left and right. And there's a strong hard left and a hard right, but where's the hard center? I want the hard center. That's where I want to stand. Anyway, if you want to continue the conversation with me, I would love it if people would look at geekboss.com. There's all kinds of interesting, I hope, thoughts and ideas there. On our blog at Articulate Marketing, there's lots of information and resources and ideas about marketing for tech people, people who have software projects or who want to change the world through technology. If anybody would like to talk to me, goodness me, if you want to, if you go to articulatemarketing.com/meet, MEET, my calendar is up there. You can book a meeting and I'd be delighted to talk to you. Fantastic.
Matthew, Stibbe, as you know, at this point, I open up the platform for you to promote anything that you'd like. This has been extraordinary, and I think the listeners will really enjoy everything that we've talked about. I certainly have. So the platform is yours.
Oh, my word. That's a very generous gift, and I feel a little bit humbled by it. I am sort of interested in how technology people market themselves. One of the things I think at the heart of marketing, everyone has this idea of marketing that it's sort of arm twisting and persuading people through lies to do something they don't want to do at an extreme version. I think it's helping inform people's choices and helping people make better choices. So one of the challenges that I see in tech marketing, software marketing, is what I call the man or the person in the mirror problem. So the thing that motivated you to write software, produce a new piece of technology, invent a new thing, isn't necessarily the thing that motivates the person who's going to buy it from you, right? They're probably looking for a solution to a problem. They're probably looking to change what they do or improve what they do or make their life happier. So you need to imaginatively work to put yourself in their shoes, see the world through their eyes, understand their needs, problems, goals, ambitions, challenges, and talk about their issues in their language, not about your issues, your technology, in your jargon. And I see this, we work with dozens of high-tech firms. We see this again and again and again as a problem. So you're giving me a platform I could maybe use to, move the world forward a little bit. This is the thing I would share is try to understand what people are dealing with and go there with your marketing and tell the stories that will resonate for those people. And I'd sum this up in a wonderful quote from Jason Fried of Basecamp fame. He said, there's an enormous difference between this is what my product does and this is what you can do with my product. They sound very similar, but they're two very different things. If you talk about what you can do with your product, that's a very powerful marketing message. And the people who are going to be motivated by that and engage with that and believe in that and buy it, those are the customers you want to reach, and helping them understand it and helping them make it real and see how it could impact their life. That, I think, is a very inspirational marketing journey. And it's not a manipulative one at all, I think. So that's my hope. That's my platform. That's my grandstanding done. And if you want to find out how to do it, come to articulatemarketing.com.
Excellent. Matthew Stibbe, thank you again. This has been absolutely marvelous. And I'm looking forward to editing this and re-listening to it because, I was taking notes as you saw over here. And I think this was wicked. Thank you again.
It's been delightful. It's been a very enjoyable way to spend a Friday afternoon. Thank you so much for having me and listening to me whiffle on. I really appreciate it. It's been great.
In Reread Saturday News, this week we talk about healthy constraints in Why Limit WIP. We are drowning in work. Many decades ago, a friend of mine, Danny Bailus, had a cool mini bike. He rode it around our neighborhood in Howland, Ohio all summer. It was the third coolest thing that held my attention that summer. That was until Danny decided that it did not go fast enough and removed the governor from the small engine. He removed the constraint from the system and the engine burned out. His father was not very happy. Danny was not very happy. And I was very happy that I was not riding it when it happened. In this chapter, Mr. Benson discusses the differences between healthy and unhealthy constraints. Remember, buy a copy of Why Limit WIP, link in the show notes, and read along. All previous entries in this reread are also in the show notes. In the software process and MeasurementCast number 703, we continue on our basics theme with an essay on teams and team design. We also have a visit from John M. Quigley, who will regale us with tales from the alpha and omega of product development. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?